Paranoidal Paranoia. Now, I found the reason I came up with this title, I had planned on working on another story or two that I had outlined earlier, and had those ready as I was leading into the Friday stream, and neither of them were jumping out at me. I think I could have written them fine, but wasn't terribly moved by either one, so I don't think the time was right. So I was looking for another title, and someone online had asked if anyone had had a paranormal experience, but I misread it as paranoid experience. And as I was reading everybody's responses to the post, I was kind of baffled at first until I realized that he had actually said paranormal, which made a little more sense. So I thought, oh, paranoid paranormal, that sounds pretty cool. And then as I was thinking about it, I was like, well, paranormal paranoia kind of rolls off the tongue a little better. And I said, I can't be the first person who's come up with this, so there has to be something else out there. And I looked it up, and there's actually a poem called Paranormal Paranoia that's actually pretty good. I read it online. So I didn't want to snag that title and compete with that poem, even though probably most people haven't seen it, but it was good, and was going to do it with the respect of switching the title up. So I went with Paranoid Paranormal. When I looked that up, I believe there's a podcast with that name already and a song with that name already. So my little quirk of using those words together is not a new thing at all. So I went with paranoidal paranoia because there's a little bit of symmetry there with the endings of the words, and it turns out that's a rare form of the word paranoid, so it puts it in a little bit different category. I don't know if it was worth all that trouble to come up with a different title, but this will make the story at least the tiny bit unique as we start out. So let's get a first sentence down. We'll say that Lydia Jane was dead longer than she, let's say, had been. Lydia Jane had been. Lydia Jane had been dead longer than she'd been alive. But she still wasn't used to it. She often wondered as she wandered the halls that had been her estate in her living childhood. That may be a little too long, but let's look at it. She often wondered as she wandered the halls that had been her estate in her living childhood if people who lived longer had an easier time at being dead. That wasn't the thing people talked to little girls about in her time. She wasn't sure if times had changed. It was hard to focus on the present without a body, eyes, or sense of time. All right. So far so good. Let's run with this a little bit. At first, she thought it might be a dream, but she supposed that was just a silly hope. Then she wondered if it might not all be a trick. There wasn't any such thing as ghosts. That's how it was supposed to be. Lydia rounded another corner, even though she could have passed right through it without a pause. It was easy to get lost as a ghost. She learned that quickly, and no one would come to help you when you were dead. She learned that soon after. She paused at the top of a short flight of stairs. She couldn't tell if they were carpeted or not, or if it was just a flaw in her unreliable vision. She waited. Lydia couldn't be sure this was the same spot. One place didn't connect to the other all the time like it did in the world of the living. Sunlight dazzled her and threatened to scatter her apart. She suffered through it. Light hurt in a way the living could not understand when they had eyes to close whenever something was too bright. All right. The sun settled on the wall and floor at just the perfect angle. Now the room was clear, but made no sense to her still. She had spent a long time following her mother around the house after, let's change this to Lydia. We need to be clear about which she we're talking about. Lydia had spent a long time following her mother around the house after she died. I need to put something else up here. It wasn't the sort of thing you talk to little girls. Lydia had never, ever seen another dead person in all her many years of haunting. Lydia had spent a long time following her mother around the house after she died. She cried out to her mother to hold her and help her. Over time, her mother her mother's eyes darkened, her skin sagged, and her hair was always out of place. Lydia's father, brothers, and sisters. Lydia's father, brothers, and sisters all gave mother distance. It wasn't long before Lydia Jane wondered if all her crying might be driving her mother crazy. One day she went to apologize, but could never find her mother again. As a little ghost, she watched her brothers and sisters age while Lydia could not. Even her baby brother grew into a young man she didn't recognize. She tried to cry out to her siblings and father like she'd done her mother. She'd done with her mother. Father never flinched. Sometimes one of the boys or girls would turn suddenly with eyes wide, but they'd never respond to her calls for help. Time grew more slippery. Time grew more slippery as it slipped by year after year. Sometimes Lydia thought that she missed entire years as she wandered the halls of the estate. In time, old adults who looked so much like her brothers and sisters sat around grand Christmas trees or at banquet tables. Her brattiest brother, then with gray hair and bald spots, kindly brushed another little girl's hair as she sat in his lap. Why do you brush her so kindly when you pulled my hair so cruelly? Cruel. Alright, I'm gonna need some help spelling this. So cruelly, James. James never flinched, but the little girl turned about so quickly. Lydia thought old James might have pulled her hair after all. The little girl hugged the old man tighter as her eyes searched the shadows along the edges of the room. Alright. Then even her old brothers and sisters were gone too. That's when the hallways changed. As the sun hit the right spot, she saw the room below her clearly. Lydia Jane had not been outside since 2 weeks before she'd died, unknown years ago. Okay. But this room, the one revealed to her when the sun was just right, was not from her estate. She turned her view to the hall behind her and peered at the rooms through other doorways. This was not her estate. It was too small and filled with things she couldn't identify. I'm in a different house, she admitted to herself for the very first time. She didn't want to believe it because she didn't understand it. Had she drifted to another place and now haunted the halls of strangers? Had they knocked down her estate and built this in its place? Lydia Jane giggled at the thought of being caught in a new house like a bug in a jar. There's that sound again, like laughing. She turned around to a voice she did not recognize, but the light had changed enough that she lost herself in this house again. By the time she was aware of her surroundings again, she judged herself to be in a kitchen. The ice box was wrong, and hummed like old drunk man. The light above her made her feel ill. It flickered in the most terrible, rapid pattern of pale, dead illumination. If she tried to stare at it, she felt herself coming apart. Sometimes she imagined she saw fan blades spinning over the top of that awful light. A woman opened the door to an oven and appeared to start cooking without lighting any fire. This can't be real, Lydia Jane said. The woman closed the oven with a bang and looked around. Kayla? Yes, Mom. The voice was distant, almost in another world from Lydia's sense of sound with no ears. She recognized the voice that had spoken from the stairs. They heard me giggle. Lydia said. The woman's eyes flicked her direction, but then moved quickly out of the kitchen. When the living moved too fast, Lydia saw them in still flashes, gaps between their movements made them appear to disappear. Mom, let's say the woman, was gone in 4 still flashes. The light changed. Hold on, this is where we need to put in something different. Okay. Then the hulking figure hunkered down to Lydia's level. She perceived from what had been her young height in life. Sometimes she tried to fly, but never succeeded, as the awful face in front of the little ghost smiled, well no, leered with too many teeth. Lydia, I'll say she, backed away until she thought she might vanish into the kitchen wall. She wanted to get away from this thing. Its face was streaked in scarlet runnels. Move this up a little. It dripped as it rushed toward her in one smooth motion. Lydia tried to scream, but had no throat to do so. It was the first time she'd tried such a thing in all these years of being dead, and she failed. The thing was gone. The kitchen was gone. She found herself lost in someone else's hallways. Did you see her too? The voice was small, but closer. Sounded like the same world. Alright. What did I call that girl? Kayla. Okay. Separate those words. Alright, not 100% positive where this story's going, but I'll try to keep it moving. Did you see her too? The voice was small but closer. Sounded like the same world. Hey, Clever. Thanks for dropping in, man. I'm writing a ghost story about a dead little girl, so this should be fun. Did you see her too? The voice was small but closer. Sounded like the same room. Sounded like the same world. It was the voice, the woman from the kitchen called Kayla. Do you see me now? Kayla. Lydia Jane asked. Another voice, deeper, guttural, inhuman, said, a good old-fashioned ghost story. We'll see. Alright. Another voice, deeper, guttural, inhuman, said, I'm the one who brought you here. Lydia spun about too quickly and nearly flung herself into a wall. She tried to back away. Then the awful voice was behind her. Okay. Then the awful voice was behind her. You'll be here as long as I need you, and not a moment longer. I promise. She spun again and caught a glimpse of slanted eyes like two gashes in the darkness. Somehow, in the darkness, somehow they glowed with darkness. She stumbled through a door and found herself in a bedroom. The sunlight from the windows stung her and fractured her view of the world. For one mad moment, she thought, this is how flies see the world. There was no way she could know that. There was no way she could know that. But she felt it was true. Help me, Kayla said. Lydia Jane turned her view into the terrible sunlight. For a moment and no more, she saw the shape of a girl a little older than herself, the last time she was a living thing. Okay, we'll make that the end of the sentence. Last time she was a living thing, this girl was a figure in shadow compared to the blazing light. She sat against the wall in a pocket below the streaming sun, hugging her knees to her chest. Kayla? Lydia Jane asked. Her voice seemed to echo into infinity, calling Kayla over and over. The sun was really doing a number on her. Lydia couldn't stay in here much longer. "You can see me?" Kayla asked. It was the strangest thing Lydia could imagine being asked. What? Have you seen my mother? Lydia melted away in the sun and didn't know anything until she found herself in that strange kitchen again. It might have been the right time of day, because the dark kitchen seemed so very clear to her. Kayla? Lydia asked the empty room. Are you still there? You will all be here until I am done with you. The terrible voice said behind her. Then something she thought she'd never experience again happened. she felt a hand upon a shoulder she no longer had. It was wet and cold. The nails, or maybe they were claws, dug into flesh that no longer existed. Okay. She felt cold breath on her non-existent neck. Non-existent neck. Alright, that should be the same paragraph, so let me move that sentence up. Okay, Lydia tore away from the monstrous grasp. She expected to be shredded, but she was fully a ghost again as she stumbled through a house she had trouble seeing. In here, the voice was so very quiet, but Lydia Jane followed as best she could. She passed through a door before she realized it was there. She passed through a door before she realized it was there. Get down and stay quiet. Lydia Jane knew how to stay quiet, but she'd not so much as crouched since the day she died. And she was starting to believe that might have been centuries ago. Then a hand took hold of her hand that Lydia couldn't believe she still had. This hand was warm and clawless, but she still tried to pull away. No, please. He's still out there. Sit with me. Lydia Jane allowed herself to be polled. Alright, Lydia Jane allowed herself to be polled and sat down next to Kayla in the dark closet under the coats. The relief of sitting down after all this time was exquisite. It wasn't that she'd felt tired. She hadn't felt anything that she remembered. But sitting down was so intense, she nearly drifted into the floor before Kayla pulled her back up level. Lydia saw the other girl's eyes, hair, mouth, and shoulders, but couldn't hold onto any detail or color. "Are you like me?" Lydia asked. Kayla looked at the inside of the closed door and back at Lydia. It was so strange to be seen. "I guess so. Did you die?" "I did. I think it was a long time ago, but I don't know." "I'm Lydia Jane." Kayla nodded. "Did you die here?" "I don't know where here is. I was in a different house with my family and got sick. I didn't get better. I was brought here by him." Kayla motioned with her head toward the closet door, as if that explained everything. "Did he bring you here too?" "I don't know where here is. I don't know where here is. I don't know who he is. Keep it down, Kayla said. Lydia didn't understand what that meant. Have you seen my mother? He keeps us apart. I've seen a woman. She called your name. Where was she? The door tore open and the closet flooded with painful light. Kayla screamed and Lydia tried again, but failed once more. The bloody face of the misshapen creature showed all its teeth. Found you. Everything was gone until Lydia found herself in the kitchen. The woman was there again. She tried to open the oven over and over, but her hand kept passing through the handle. Are you Kayla's mom? The woman gave out a shriek and turned on Lydia. Who are you? What are you doing here? I'm Lydia Jane, and I have no idea. Kayla is looking for her mom, and something terrible is going on here. Why are we here? The woman asked. Lydia tried to shake her head, but nothing happened. Can you hold my hand? I haven't been able to touch anything. Not since Lydia wasn't sure if that was the end of a sentence. She still felt weird about interrupting adults. Will you try to hold my hand? I need to find Kayla and her mother. How do you know my Kayla? I think she's a ghost like me. Lydia said. The most amazing thing happened then. The woman cried. Real tears fell from her colorless face to the floor of the kitchen. They even caught the light as they fell like real raindrops. She's not dead, Lydia thought. Alright. She's not dead, Lydia thought. But then the woman took Lydia's hand. Being a ghost and still new to touch, Lydia startled. It felt like she was all hand, but she moved from the kitchen, feeling Kayla's mom's hand, okay, let's say fingers, folded between hers. They approached the closet. Lydia reached for the knob, but there was no hand to grasp it. She giggled to herself. I know that laugh. Kayla's mom said, "How long have you been around us?" Lydia, Kayla called from upstairs. "Is that you?" Kayla. The girl, okay, this will be sentence capital. The girl's mother released Lydia's hand, and she went, saying Lydia Jane, went back to incorporal Alright, let's see what's going to happen in this ghost story. Wait for me. But Kayla's mother moved faster than Lydia could track. Then the knob of the closet door turned. It flung open hard enough to wave the coats inside. The bloody face leaned out with excruciating slowness compared to the speed of the opening door. They aren't real. It growled. It growled at her. You made them up to keep from being so lonely. Lydia looked for the stairs, but couldn't see them. She turned because she seemed to be facing a blind corner. The awful face tracked in front of her, in front of the little ghost. "What are you?" she demanded. He gave a hissing laugh that brought blood bubbles from between the awful teeth. "Maybe I'm not real either. Maybe I'm not real either. Maybe I made you up to lure them in here. Okay. He reached out a rail thin black leathery arm, and Kayla felt her heart for the first time in forever as he started to crush it. Lydia let out a groan, but there was nowhere to dispose of the pain. She was now all heart, and everything hurt too much to be real. All right. Shortly after she'd died. Okay, let's do this a different way. Before she died, her mother came. Okay, let's say before she died years ago, so we understand this is different. Before she died years ago, her mother came to Lydia Jane's sickbed every night to pray for healing and mercy. In a small voice, her mother had added a call for God's will to be done. That line scared Lydia, partly because it would excuse God for not healing, partly because it sounded so much like her mother didn't mean it. After she died, Lydia tried her best to pray to God to either take her all the way to heaven or to erase her from existence completely. No, hold on, let me word that a different way. All the way to heaven, or to finish erasing her from existence. All right. To finish erasing her from existence. She had no hands to fold, but she'd said the words, She prayed everything except the call for God's will to be done. No excuses this time. Now she prayed. Now she prayed again. Again for God's mercy. But the pain persisted as this terrible creature hissed his wet laugh into her ghostly face. Something pushed her, and Lydia's heart popped free of his grip. The pain persisted and throbbed, pulsed, persisted and pulsed outward until she felt every fiber of a body she no longer had. Kayla took one hand and Kayla's mother took the other, dragging Lydia toward a front door, fracturing. Kayla took one hand, and Kayla's mother took the other, dragging Lydia toward a front door, fracturing in the afternoon sunlight. They take you to be destroyed. The creature growled. They aren't real. What's he saying? Kayla asked. Just keep going. Through the door, like it isn't there. Kayla's mom said. Say she ordered. But it is there. The creature roared from the edge of the spilling light that Lydia Jane felt over her entire body. And you can't leave until I am done with you. I'll just bring you back. They did crash through the front door of the house. It felt solid and it hurt, but they passed through it until the sunlight scattered them and Lydia Jane could no longer feel their hands. Time passed. It felt like a lot, but she couldn't be sure. Lydia Jane blinked herself back to the present. Actually blinked. She felt her face. She felt her face with real hands. She felt her clothes and remembered the outfit from life. Lydia Jane ran out into a hallway. She did not recognize. It wasn't the estate. It wasn't the strange house either. It was large and full of hallways. Did I dream it all? Her voice actually echoed back to her like a natural thing. She dared to hope and ran down one of the empty halls. Mother, I had the worst dream. Lydia, it was Kayla's voice. It was Kayla's voice, like from another world, too far away to reach. Okay, we're gonna wrap this up here. Kayla, where are you? What is this place? I don't know. I can't find my mother. Can you help me? Lydia Jane. Let's do this. A chill traveled over Lydia Jane's skin like a real thing. Lydia, are you coming? The voice was further away. Lydia backed into a wall. It was a solid thing, but she felt herself sinking into it. She pulled away and tried to touch the wall with her new hand. It was solid, but she could press her fingers into it, just like before. As she held her hand up, she could see details of the wall and floor through it. It was still there. She could feel it, but it was fading from her sight. I found you. The other voice growled, much closer than Kayla. It took a while. But I did. And we're all together again, closer to finished. Let's do this again. What do you mean? Lydia Jane asked. The monster did not answer, not even with his hissing, bloody laugh. At least he did not show his awful face this time. Lydia Jane started wandering and searching the halls. As she did, her form faded, and she forgot what it was like to have a body for a little while. She started to call a name, but then couldn't remember which one she was going to say. Shapes moved within the shadows, and Lydia Jane wondered if there was anyone here. This was not the estate she'd lived in during life. Something was wrong. Lydia Jane had been dead much longer than she'd been alive, but she still wasn't used to it. Alright. That came out to about 3,000 words. I don't know if it is a coherent story or not, but I will take that for a spin for editing. Maybe I can pull out some themes. Maybe I can tighten up the narrative a little bit. Maybe I can make sense of things, or if I'm not going to make sense of things, maybe I can make the strange elements in the story seem more purposeful and create a solid narrative there.